All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I'm your host, Cardin Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And do you guys remember when Kamala Harris totally snubbed Tulsi Gabbard and everybody else by saying she was a top-tier candidate? Well, it looks like Elizabeth Warren is kind of doing the same thing, but to the entire state of California. And the newly elected Mr. Hicks, who is head of the California Democratic Party, has a thing or two to say about it. Cody, tell us what's going on.
Well, I guess really quickly to kind of run through it, there is something that's come up all throughout any kind of campaign. There'll be certain times where you have an event in one part of the country and one day an event in one part of the country and the same day or similar, and you can't be at both, or other various reasons. Candidates miss events. So Elizabeth Warren announced she will not be attending a Democratic Party / Univision presidential forum in California. Now, this in and of itself, I wouldn't say is too big of news. Biden, for example, announced he would be missing this event 2 months ago. No one really cared. There was some like, oh, the frontrunner's not going to be here, but he announced months in advance, hey, look, I have a conflict. Even Andrew Yang, he wasn't at a recent LGBT forum, I believe, for CNN, just conflict. However, as you brought up, Rusty Hicks was not having this. When Warren, I don't know if I want to consider it a surprise. It wasn't known until Tuesday, so yesterday from data filming, that she'd be missing this. So there's a bit of surprise, however. And Rusty Hicks went to social media, and this wasn't oh, you know what, I shouldn't put that on Facebook. It got deleted 5 minutes later. I believe the tweet that echoes this message is still up. Anyway, it seems like the Democrats are not happy in California at all that Elizabeth Warren's missing. Yeah. It is important to remember also Elizabeth Warren leads in the polls currently in California, but listen to some of the excerpts in this. Now, it is worth noting, he does mention Joe Biden in this. However, Joe Biden announced 2 months ago he was not going to be at this event, and there was no response. Elizabeth Warren announces the next day this response comes out. Am I prompted? But this is the one thing that I think really stood out to me. It was this line where he says, "It's clear you don't think you need us to win the primary, but you just might need us in the general. Just saying. So reconsider your decision." Yeah. Like, holy, that is, we were talking before. It literally sounds like it's a nice campaign you got going there. It'd be a shame if in the general something happened to it.
I was going to say, can we play the Godfather soundtrack?
Yeah.
If that weren't a copyright violation in the Google algorithms, I literally would just have Cody read that much slower with his silky smooth Italian accent, you know? And just like be playing like Scarface behind it, or be playing.
Well, here's the other thing too,
like the Godfather.
Yeah, but listen to what he says in here as well. It's really interesting to me. He says, and continuing, and show us you value the contributions of California's hardworking Democrats due to the gritty house-to-house work it takes to win. Anything less is deeply disappointing. Hope to see you in Long Beach November 16th. It doesn't sound like this was we regret to inform you won't be coming. We're upset. Like I said, this does feel like an open threat. We hope to see you there. We expect to see you there, Ms. Warren. So very strongly worded. I mean, I respect your work, but you should reconsider your misguided decision to publicly snub California's Democrats and Latino voters. Holy cow. He refers to the decision as blatant disregard and disrespect to California's grassroots leaders, who again goes through, and then he goes on to make his threat. So I was looking a little bit more, alleged threat. I read that as a threat. I read, you might need us, so reconsider, as a threat. Anyway, moving on.
Well, but I like how he started out. I respect your work / candidacy, comma, but
he gave him 6 words. I respect you guys, but here's a list of my complaints. It's almost like what is it in Seinfeld, the reading of the grievances. It's like holy, but this is like threat. I mean,
like at that point you might as well not even just say I respect your work / candidacy, and just straight up say you should consider your misguided decision to publicly snub California's Democrats.
Oh yeah, but here, I want to say something else about this too. So I was doing a little bit more reading into this. Even though we live in California, to be 100% frank, I'm not up on everything California Democratic Party. There's stuff like, for example, I remember vaguely the news Rusty Hicks got elected, but that was in July, I think. I don't remember more beyond that.
Yeah.
So I just went into some more kind of local sources, and I pulled up an article really fascinating from the Sacramento Bee, and they bring up a really interesting point here that I want to point out. And basically, according to the Bee, and this is really plausible to me, is the notion that it's important to remember. Sorry, I'm trying to kind of scan through this because I lost my place before, but the California moved its primary up. The California primary used to be pretty much so far down in the primary.
Yeah, we were buried, dude.
There was literally, like, I think most primaries most years were like settled. Like, it was like, California. Which is weird. At the same time, I do see the inverse of, because when people live in California, you don't want the inverse of like, California's like one of the, we're going to see what happens. But what happens?
I would love it if we were Iowa. I would love it if everybody bent over backwards what happens for us. If maybe there'd be more competition.
But what happens to a primary when someone dominates California? If you win California by 30 points,
That would never happen.
But if it does in a primary, all of a sudden it's like, wow,
With
that
how
guy's gonna
diverse
win.
we are,
He won
bro.
California already.
Like, for example,
In a primary is different though, because
how many Asians do we have here? You look at the huge percentage of Asians that are supporting Andrew Yang. If there were a state that could throw a monkey wrench into national politics, instead of having a largely homogenous state that's all establishment Democrats that do well with the white northeastern limousine liberals constantly, okay? If we all of a sudden had the diverse state with all of the Latinos, all of the Asians,
Remember,
all the
primary.
Pacific Islanders.
So it's all Democrats voting for a Democrat.
No, I get that, but 70% of 70% of Asians are Democrats. Imagine how much if we were the primary state instead of Iowa, how much better would Andrew Yang be doing?
Don't care, nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Okay.
Back to the story, because I found what I was trying to talk to you guys about. So here's what we got. It's really interesting. So this is again from the Sacramento Bee article. This is what I hadn't really put the 2 and 2 together yet, but I guess it's natural. So they say the announcement comes as candidates begin to focus more of their energy on states that hold their primary election days earlier than California's. In recent months, however, visits to California have been fewer and further between. Recently, Kamala Harris announced she's not even going to campaign here and just going to go all in Iowa. And what we're noticing here, remember I said a little while ago, if you want to win a presidential election, just go around the country and talk bad about California and people will love you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, California's getting jealous now. People are going to Iowa and talking about how bad California is.
Well, even Andrew Yang, what did he say in the opening of his speech?
He said, you guys are worth more. But listen to this. This is what I want to really get to is here. Hicks will serve as one of California's 495 delegates when Democrats select their nominee to compete against President Trump in the general election. Mm-hmm. He is upset with the lack of attention the state has received, giving the party bumped up its primary to March 3rd, and early voting begins on Feb 3rd, the same day as the Iowa caucuses. And then it goes on to list what he's saying. So I think what we're really seeing here is this boil over, because again, Elizabeth Warren is leading in the state of California. It's not a comfortable lead. She's duking it out with Biden, but again, Biden's not going to be there either. So the notion that California's like, look, we're tired of just everyone taking us for granted, ignoring us.
Yeah.
So we're going to move a primary up. So they move the primary up, and people still would rather be in Iowa. And say, I don't care. I'm going to go to Iowa and campaign. I got to do good in Iowa. And California is now seeing the leadership say, it seemed like when Biden said he wasn't going to be there, it was, okay, annoying. But now it's like to the point where they're saying, look, guys, we're not going to just sit by idly while you ignore us.
Yeah,
and we're going to say something back.
Yeah, but hold on. That's because California voted to put itself onto Super Tuesday. And Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina all vote in their primaries before Super Tuesday. If California were smart, okay, they'd find a way to make it so that they were competing with Iowa, not with the rest of the Super Tuesday states. But they didn't do that. So sure, California became more relevant, but not most relevant when they went to Super Tuesday. For those of you that aren't familiar with a lot of primaries, the first states to vote are always Iowa and New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, it's crazy. They open the polls at like midnight. You can literally camp out, and at 12:01, it's like you're going to watch Return of the Jedi in the 70s, all right? You can actually camp out and then start voting at midnight on the day of voting in Iowa. You know, those two states command so much attention because oftentimes the momentum gained in those early states sets the trend and establishes the precedent of how people perceive you in the rest of the primaries that come up to a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later, okay? And California used to be one of those primaries that nobody ever paid attention to because they were buried weeks. I don't want to misquote myself and say weeks, but they were just buried behind all of the other states, okay? So California decided to make itself more relevant by jumping to Super Tuesday. The conglomerate of like 15 to 20 states that all vote on the Tuesday afterwards, that do have a lot of relevance. But at the end of the day, if you really want to become relevant, then make yourself that first state. It's that simple. And he didn't do it, so don't complain.
That is, I don't know. I would disagree with that. I mean, I don't feel for the party because it's politics. I don't feel for any of these people. However, it is a little bit, I mean, I do understand the notion of like, well, look, if your complaint with why you wouldn't want to come to California is because we didn't move up our primary. Well, we just did. So, I mean, the fact is, I think the bigger thing is I don't think California can compete with the fact. I don't believe every state works this way. The way Iowa works, though, is a little bit unique. It's a super delegate state, right? Am I getting this correct? So basically, I think I get the words wrong. Again, I'm not Not a fan of these people and things they do. However, in Iowa, if you don't pull it above 15%, like they force your votes to go to someone. It's a state it's hyper competitive.
It's called the viability threshold.
Yeah, exactly. So you really need to. And then also, as you said,
well, it's brutal. Like our audience has to understand this. They have rules in Iowa that if you can't pull the 15% minimum, to get on the debate stage, they're saying you have to have a 5%, polling average. Yeah. But to actually compete in the primaries, not just the debate stage, to be in the primaries, you have to have a viability threshold of at least 15% of Democratic voters, right? And if you don't, then you have to pledge your delegates to somebody who does, which creates an automatic maximum threshold of what? That would have to be 6 candidates at max, because let's just say all of them came in at exactly 15%, a couple of them having 16%, 15 times 6, you're looking at 90%. You can't squeeze another 15 in there. So even if they were spread perfectly evenly, you could only have 6. But the second that Joe Biden snatches up 30 or 40%, the second that, Bernie Sanders snatches up 25 or Elizabeth Warren snatches up 25, then all of a sudden there's only room for maybe about 4. Okay. And then all the other micro candidates, the mini candidates, the guys down below have to pledge their support to these bigger guys.
And a quick aside, currently ironically enough, the only candidate kind of comfortably above that 15% threshold
is
in
Joe
Iowa.
Biden, right?
No, it's Warren. Biden's at 15.7 as of date of recording.
Oh, what's Warren at?
22.3. She's the only one with a comfortable, like you said, that threshold met. So I do see why Biden, and I also, I wonder.
Well, if Biden's at basically at 16 and Warren's basically at 23, okay, you're looking at nearly
0.3.
Okay, you're looking at nearly 40% there, which means there's really only room.
4 candidates. It's Buttigieg, Sanders, Biden, Warren.
Once you throw Sanders in there, there's pretty much only room for one other.
Buttigieg is at 17% in the state. It's probably one of the best performing states.
Yeah, so I mean, basically it looks like hopefully it becomes Buttigieg, Warren, Sanders, Biden, Yang.
Yeah, or Yang takes over for Biden when he drops. I still believe it's going to happen. Yeah. But I have a question for you. Based on what you were saying, I have a question. Do you think maybe like from California, they're sitting here saying, Biden, I get it. I mean, Biden his latest Iowa state poll was under 15%. Maybe like Biden, I understand why he's not coming. Harris, she's going to be there, but she should be in Iowa. But they're like, Elizabeth, you're the only person with this like buoy in Iowa. I get you can't just take that for granted and lose the state, but you think maybe that was when they're kind of like, hold on a minute. Both the national frontrunners and both the state frontrunners are leaving us for Iowa. Both of us. And then Warren also, like I said, Biden, I'm not Biden's biggest fan, but I will say it's a lot more professional to announce your absence 2 months in advance than 2 days.
Well, then you look prepared and you don't look like you're snubbing.
And it looks like you've known Iowa's going to be important for months and not like, oh crap, Iowa's important. I guess I got to restructure. I don't want to turn this video into that, but any candidate who today or in the last week or so has restructured their campaign to do better in Iowa, what were they thinking going into this thing? Oh, we're gonna focus really heavily on what? Like,
well, to me, I look at this and I think this is a challenge that Rusty Hicks has, because there is a super majority of Democrats in both our state legislature and our state assembly, which is the equivalent of our House of Representatives and our Senate. Okay. And Republicans don't hold a single statewide office. We're talking governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, so on and so forth. Not state controller, not insurance commissioner, nothing. They're all Democrats. And so as much as a Democrat, you say, oh, that's got to be awesome. That's got to be awesome. Not really. Single party rule is not only destructive to the minority party, but it's also destructive to the majority party, because what happens is at large, Democrats think, oh, I don't have to worry about California. If California's got problems, I don't have to help them, because no matter what, I'm going to get their votes.
And no competitions would kill WWE. WWE was great when it had competition. As soon as it bought its competition, it went downhill until it's where it is.
And so national candidates don't give a crap. And if they're not giving a crap during the primaries, what makes you think they're going to give a crap during the actual administration of their presidency? And if they don't give a crap during the national campaign after they've won the primaries, because all they did was focus on Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and all those other states, what makes you think that if they make it into the White House, that they're even going to really care about you? Because the whole time they think, dude, we've gerrymandered California so tight. We've lied to all the minority groups so well. We've gotten all of the positions over there on lockdown so well that we can just let it sit there and rot. And what happens is sooner or later it rots so bad that hopefully people figure it out and they start voting the other way and you start over. But I mean, look what single party rule did to Russia. Look what it did to the Eastern Bloc. Look what it did everywhere. It's wildly destructive, not just to the minority party, but also to the majority party. And so Rusty Hicks has to figure out, how do I maintain relevance when my national party doesn't give a crap about my existence because they know that we will just vote for them no matter what. You literally become the redheaded stepchild. No offense to redheaded stepchildren.
Well, but I just don't know what.
This is what Stephen Smith talked about at Brown University when he was like, I want all the African community to go out and vote GOP tomorrow, because how can we complain that we are a maligned and forgotten about people when we tell the Democrats, yo, do your thing, we're going to vote for you no matter what, and Republicans, you can't touch us. If we would actually go out and vote Republican tomorrow, it would shock the system.
Well, but hold on, I have a question.
Yeah?
So in this example, should the California Democratic Party turn into Republicans? I don't understand what you're trying to say.
I think what's going to happen is obviously them turning into Republicans is a non-starter, because that would never happen. But even Rusty Hicks himself said the biggest division we've ever had in our California party's history was in 2016 between the progressives wanting impeachment and the establishment folks not wanting impeachment. And the way single party rule falls isn't because the minority party all of a sudden gets so strong that everybody votes for them. No, the minority party gets killed. Okay. The parasite infects the host and then the host dies. What happens is the parasites start infighting and then there becomes a civil war and split of the majority party. It's like people never went to the Whigs. The Whigs just stopped existing.
But what do you, again, I don't understand. Moving on. I don't get it. That's relevant at all, but whatever.
Okay,
moving on. Well, it doesn't make sense to me. The leading candidates are snubbing California as a state.
They're snubbing because they don't need to pay attention to California.
Okay, but like I said, you can't. I don't think that the California Democrats can just stop voting Democrat. As a state where Republican.
No. I think they'll divide into two factions that become the AOC, Illinois Mar, the progressive, the Bernie sect, and then you'll have the establishment sect that rejects them.
That's a national issue. It's not a local issue.
No, I know, but within the California Democratic Party, you're already seeing two factions.
Within the National Democratic Party, that's exactly. There's a literal.
Well, according to Rusty Hicks, he says it's happening to the California Democratic
as
Party
well. But there's a.
And I've noticed that in our hometown.
Yeah, but there's literally an active reformation of the Democratic Party today. There's a progressive reformation movement. It's happening everywhere, and it is interesting.
I don't know if I'd say reformation. I'd say.
What would you call it?
Scorched earth destruction.
It's a reformation. There is a group of people trying to fundamentally change the Democratic Party really operates and functions. Fundamentally.
Reformation
They're trying to fundamentally
such
change
beautiful connotations throughout history.
We were talking about this before the show, man. Like I said, you don't get to say that. It's a reformation. It really is. Anyway, I just want to wrap up a little bit here. Once again, highlighting, we talked a little bit about some of the things. If it really is just kind of frustrations boiling over of, hey, we moved our primary. We set up this big event with a party in Univision. It's supposed to be this big platform, this big debate, not debate, but this big platform talking about Latino issues in the state. We did all this stuff. We got all this put together. And now the two leading vote getters in the nation and the state aren't going to show up because they'd rather be in Iowa for sure for Joe Biden. Actually, I believe as of recording, Elizabeth Warren has not returned any, the campaign has not returned any response.
Can I give you a better example?
No, because...
Hey, come on. I get to opine too.
Well, give me a minute. I gave you so long to paint this picture of all this weird nonsense that made no sense.
It has to do with Batman. It's a good one.
Okay, but you know what?
No,
arguments aside of other people's arguments, I did really think it does really stick out to me. Again, this reads like a classic. You got a nice thing going here. Be ashamed if something happened. I mean, him saying that it's clear you don't think you need us, but you might in the general. So reconsider. We hope to see you, and your decision's a blatant disregard. Where does he say? I urge you to reconsider. I think he says something like that. He says reconsider your misguided decision to publicly snub. This is very strongly.
What do you think he could actually do? Because obviously that does kind of sound like a mafioso saying, that's a beautiful family you have there. A shame if something would have happened to it.
Exactly. You know? It's basically what he's saying.
But okay, well, the mafia can sequester him, cement boot him, and make a tragedy out of your life. What is Rusty Hicks really going to do to Elizabeth Warren?
And you know what? It might be one of those things where you might say, sorry, Elizabeth Warren campaign. We're going to give you guys this kind of access. We're going to promote you guys as the star of this event. But, Bernie Sanders, he's been here, man. He's been in our events. We think we might give Bernie that first offer now. I think next time we're gonna have a big event in California, we think we might reach out to the Bernie campaign first, or maybe we'll reach out to the Buttigieg campaign. Like, that's all you have to do is say, oh, you know what? Sorry, we returned your guys' calls later than you'd expect. We just didn't get them. Oh, sorry, email got lost. We missed your email. I'm sorry about that. There's so many things you could do. Just don't work with them anymore. Just every time you have to interact with us, we're gonna make it difficult. All I have to do. Especially if here's the other thing too. Warren is leading in the state. Warren's leading nationally. But it's not a slam dunk, man. I mean, in California, Warren's going back and forth, ironically enough, with Biden. But Sanders is hanging in within a few points. I mean, it isn't like Warren's got this 20-point lead in every state but Iowa. You know what I mean? She's got this lead in some states. She's trailing in others.
She's done better.
But having California turn its back on you would be bad for either of these candidates.
To me, it seems
again, not as voters, but having a California Democratic Party say, look, we made changes in our party specifically to get more attention in this cycle, and we're not getting that attention, and we're upset. You could say they're being a little bit petty and childish. That's one thing. But I do think that what they're saying is, look, we made changes to better accommodate this system. Don't get the attention we want.
I don't even think it's pettiness and childishness. I think, first off, even though you change yourself to Super Tuesday to become more relevant, not most relevant, but more relevant, it takes a while for that to build up in the zeitgeist of the political class and the chattering class. So I think just because you made a recent change, just because a restaurant's under new management doesn't mean that all of a sudden people are going to be banging its doors down, realizing how great the food is and the new service is. It takes a while for that to spread through the community that, hey, this restaurant is great. So just because we voted recently on changing our primary to Super Tuesday doesn't mean that all of a sudden in the zeitgeist and the political psychology of our ruling class, they're going to all of a sudden think, oh, California is relevant. Okay, so I think some of it naturally is going to take time. But second, I feel like the state party is kind of like that guy in The Dark Knight, that Bane used in order to get, I can't remember what he wanted, or even the name of the character, but you remember there was this little mafioso, this crime boss who's in a nice suit who'd given him a bunch of money and a bunch of technology in order for Bane to pull off one of his hits. And he says, wait, I'm in charge here. Here, you sign this agreement, see? And he showed the paper saying that he was in charge, and, Bane was like, do you feel in charge? You know what I'm saying? And I kind of think like Bane is the DNC. And then like the state party is this guy who's like, hey, we're supposed to be relevant. When you stand for Bane, okay, he doesn't care at the end of the day. He was just using you. And that's why federalism, states' rights, and all these other things are so important. And it's also shows why single party rule is so destructive, because single party rule is the ultimate stand, is it not?
No, I would disagree. I would say that just for there's a multitude of reasons why single party rule happens. I think it's actually really complicated why that happens. That's my opinion. In my opinion, single party rule is something that comes apart from a very complicated process of things. Basically, everything has to come up a certain way for an extended period of time. For example, I think California...
No, I think it's an indictment of us as people. Like people that literally just defend candidates.
That's crazy. You know why I think California's got one party rule?
Okay, why?
Because it doesn't matter what the results of our politicians are. People just want to live in California. So it doesn't matter. So our elections are kind of more just kind of like, there's a really large, I would say numerically, like, what's the word? I would say per capita, the political involvement of Californians is lower. But I would just say there's so many of us, it makes it seem like Californians are all these crazy politically engaged people. Most people in the state are not that politically engaged. They like living here. And it's people, I think the better way of putting it is, like you said, single party rule is rarely effective for all the reasons you brought up. There's no competition. There's no pushback. There's no feeling like we have to really do good or else someone will take our job, right? But the inverse of that is people love living in California, man. And it's kind of almost like when you turn up the heat on a lobster or whatever, you know what I mean? Or a frog, whatever that analogy is. Where people in California, it's like they just pay more in taxes. They deal with more nonsense and crap because, hey, I like living in California. I think it's more like that where I
think that's true for a short period of time, but the stats show that we're hemorrhaging residents.
But the inverse. Or places so awful and so miserable. Again, people just don't really care and they realize it's getting more awful and more miserable. Well, it's always been awful and miserable to me, so I didn't notice. Like, I think those are the two extremes where you see one party just take over, because what happens is people just get into the notion of California's great, I love living here, or Baltimore, I live here and it's not good. And you just kind of feel like that's the way it is. And even these small changes with the government, yeah, that's it. The amount of people fundamentally in this world that actually are not interested in politics and kind of like the tribal knee-jerk sense, but like are deeply interested in like policy and stuff, is extremely low. And it's almost kind of like social work where a lot of people are like, oh, I love working with, and then they're like, no, it's like bureaucracy and nonsense. You're going to be in this weird Kafka-esque situations. You're like, wait, what do we have to do? We have to do, but it doesn't make any sense. That's what the state said. But why is the state saying that? I don't know. Ask them. Ask who? Don't know. They don't exist. Like, that's the reality, I think, what we're seeing with these states where we're seeing the Democratic Party kind of feel like California knows it cannot just be this forgotten state. It's too big. But this is what happens when a state... Also, though, as Californians, I have to get this in. And I know it's at the end because we're still Californians. We're going to play favorites. But Californians are, when it comes to the national stage, kind of like elitist, whiny, entitled babies. And this feels like a whiny, entitled baby ran from, we moved our primary, we did all this stuff, and you still won't come. So I'm not gonna throw that out there. I do think that is maybe what we're seeing here. I think these weird mafia threats, these weird hope to see you on the 16th, like, what does it even mean, man? You can show up, in Long Beach, like, weird stuff.
Is there gonna be a black limousine waiting in the 15th in Iowa with like a guy outside of it?
That's what I think this is more. This seems a little bit more like baby rage to me than it does legit. Because, like I said, the reason why we did this video, I read this excerpt. The fact that Warren's missing an event in California to be somewhere else isn't that crazy. It's like, okay, maybe it's a good idea for her. The response, holy cow, stuck out to me. And I think part of its frustration is boiling over from California feeling like, by and large, candidates still just don't care about campaigning here. And then here's the other bad thing, too. I believe why he specifically mentions the general, they know. I mean, once the primary's over, why would a Democrat go to California? Well, the popular
vote is New York and California.
What I'm saying is, why would a Democrat come to California for anything other? Hillary came to California to fundraise. That was basically it. And she left. Like, there wasn't these, like, events, because they know, I'm going to get all your votes anyway. It doesn't matter. So I think that is where he's saying, hey, you might think in the general you only have to show up and we're going to do the work for you. Maybe this year we won't. Interesting. I'm still on the fence over how valid this guy's baby rage is, but I'm not going to...
I call it Bane rage.
I'm not going to hate on him too much, but at the same time, I do question the validity a little bit. I wonder how much of this was, why won't she come to my party, and how much of this was legitimate, like, hey, you guys can't just ignore this state. We're not going to just do everything for you without anything from you guys. That's kind of my thing. Like, is it, hey, we're doing too much work to be ignored, or is it, how dare you ignore California? I think that's my question, right? Is it, hey, we're over here breaking our backs trying to win the election for you and you're snubbing us? Or is it, how dare you? How dare you ignore California, the golden state? You know what I mean? That's my question here. I still don't know exactly. We'll know when we hear more from the Warren camp and the story continues to develop. But having someone like Rusty Hicks, so once again, Rusty Hicks is, I believe, the chair of the California Democratic Party. I mean, this guy isn't just some inconsequential nobody. He isn't a staffer. He isn't sources familiar with knowledge. He is the chair of the party saying, I implore you to reconsider. Holy cow. That's all I got.
Yep. So anyway, let us know what you guys think. If we're got a bad read on this, give us your opinions. Please make sure you comment below. If you haven't had a chance to like the video, make sure you like. If you haven't been able to subscribe, make sure you subscribe. If you want to pick up a cool Problem Solver Politics hat, make sure you go to problemsolver12politics.com and follow us on Twitter at PSP Radio 1, where we announce a lot of our videos, do a lot of our polls, interact with a lot of our fans and our viewers. And no matter what, make sure you give us a voicemail about what you think by calling 1-833-PSP-RADIO and leaving us a voicemail or calling in when we do a live stream. This is Problem Solver Politics. We will see you guys in the next video.